Hey everybody, it's my Reupload again, working on my little project to get used to the sound of my own recorded voice. I don't really have anything super important or interesting in mind to talk about today. Kind of looked over my list of possible topics and I'm just not really feeling any of them. I'm also really tired. It was a long day at work today. And I don't know. Hoping tomorrow will be a little less crazy. My boss is traveling tomorrow, so maybe we'll see, but maybe a few less maybe a few less interruptions because of that. We will see. There's just every time I feel like I make progress on something, it feels like it gets ruined by something else. Ugh, what a thing. Anyway, this is not going to be another rant about work, because I could just do that every day and bore you to death. You know, pretending people are listening to this. I have been thinking about going back and renaming the first several video recordings. I gotta stop calling them videos until I have actual video. The first several recordings I did, where I just named them Learning to Like My Voice Part Whatever. I have thought about going back and renaming them based on the actual content instead of just that. So, we'll see if I do that. If I do that, it'll happen over the weekend. And I don't know if that's gonna happen, so yeah, it's whatever. But yeah. I did kind of enjoy telling my little story about what happened with my cat the other day. So, I was kind of thinking maybe I should, in this recording, tell another story of some kind. My life has not been that interesting for the past, decade or so. I worked overnights for almost 9 years. Pretty darn close to 9 years. I worked overnights, and because of that, I did not have much of a life outside of work. It's really hard to have a life outside of work when you are sleeping when everyone else is awake. So, yeah, that made, being social really hard, so I just wasn't. And it made going out and doing stuff really hard, so I pretty much never did. But I think there were some things in my childhood that were kind of interesting. And when I had the recording where I was talking about dreams from my childhood, I thought, I don't know, it was kind of fun to revisit some of those memories. So, I was kind of thinking maybe I could talk about something from my childhood. But then I realized most of the interesting things that happened in my childhood were actually things happening to other people and me just kind of being there. Or me being involved somehow. And I'm not sure how ethical it would be for me to sit here and talk about, my siblings being injured or whatever. I mean, it's whatever. None of them are probably ever going to listen to this, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, should I be talking about this injury that happened to my sister without her knowledge? And telling the universe about it? But, I mean, the chances that anyone listens to this are whatever. I'm not. These recordings are not getting a lot of views, so. And when they are, they're not getting long views. No one has listened to, the entirety of any of these recordings. So, it's, probably not that big of a deal. We'll just start with. We'll start with something maybe kind of simple. So my sister and I are close in age, about a year apart, and so we did a lot of stuff together when we were kids. And we did a lot of, like, making up our own games and stuff when we were kids. And one of the games we played, man, I feel like I sort of have told this story recently. So now I'm wondering, did I tell this story in one of these recordings, or was I telling a friend about it? And I can't remember. So we're gonna pretend I was telling a friend, and that I have not recorded this yet. Anyway, we shared a bedroom when we were growing up. My sister and I shared a bedroom. And we each had a twin bed, and they were positioned in such a way where, like, one bed was against a wall, there was, like, an aisle in between the two beds, and then the other bed was positioned against the other wall. But there was, like, an aisle in between, sort of. And the feet of the bed faced the... I don't know, whatever, that's not important. So, the beds were next to each other, but not, like, right on top of each other. There was space between them. I think we had, like, a little nightstand in between the two beds against that wall, where the head of the beds were against that wall. There was also a nightstand in between the beds against that wall. Yeah. And, the house we lived in had, hot water heat. So, and it was, like, kind of old-fashioned. The house was pretty over 100 years old, and the hot water heat ran through cast iron registers. And in our bedroom, the cast iron register was underneath the window, and that was situated at the foot of one of our beds. So there was a cast iron register at the foot of one of our beds, underneath the window. Okay. We would play a game as kids that we called Timber. And this was pre-internet. So, you kind of had to make your own fun when you were a kid. And this game Timber was, one of us would be the tree. And as the tree, you would stand on the edge of the bed next to the aisle between the two beds. You'd just stand on the edge of the bed and, stand perfectly straight, like you're a tree. The other person would be the lumberjack. And as the lumberjack, what you would do is you would pretend you have an axe in your hand and pretend you're chopping down the tree, so you'd make a chopping motion towards the other person's feet, as though it was, like, the bottom of the tree, and you're chopping at the bottom of the tree. And then, after a few fake chops, the lumberjack would say, "Timber!" and then give the tree a little bit of a shove, so that they would, like, fall across the aisle onto the other bed. So, as a kid, it's like a cheap way of getting a little bit of a thrill of, oh my gosh, I'm falling, kind of thing. So, we would play this game, and it was a lot of fun for us. We would do it back and forth all the time. The other thing would be once, the person who was the tree the first time would be the lumberjack the next time, and we'd start on the other bed then. I don't know if that matters or why that matters, but that was a whole thing. But anyway, we were like, my sister was 3 and I was 4, and we were playing this game. We were playing Timber. We were also, like, really great at naming things, because we just named this game Timber, which is the thing you would say as the lumberjack. But anyway, so we were playing Timber, and pretty sure my mom was downstairs. Our bedroom was on the second floor. My mom was probably downstairs doing dishes or something. Who knows? Doing something. I don't know. Wasn't important. We were kids. We didn't care. And, so we were doing this back and forth, and then there was one time where my sister thought it would be more fun. Like, normally when we would do this, if you're the tree, you would kind of stand in the middle of the edge of the bed. So, like, you're standing on the edge of the bed on the long side, if that makes sense. part of the problem with doing these stream of consciousness is that I don't think of the right words for things. So then it's hard to explain things. But normally you'd stand like in the middle of the edge of the bed, so it's like, I don't know, the safest place to be, probably. But this time when my sister was the tree, she wanted to be on the end of the bed, on like the foot, basically like the corner where the long side of the bed meets the foot of the bed. And that's where she wanted to be. And we were starting on the bed that was facing, like, so that we were facing towards the window. And yeah. So she was the tree and she was standing on the corner of the bed, basically. And I was the lumberjack, did my chopping motion, then said timber and pushed her a little, gave her a little shove so she would fall off onto the next bed. And she fell. She rolled a little bit towards the foot of the next bed, towards the window, under which was the cast iron register. And she fell off the foot of the bed and hit her head on that cast iron register. And she hit it perfectly so that suddenly there was just blood everywhere. It was kind of crazy. But being a 4-year-old child, I was more worried about both of us getting in trouble than about, like, oh my gosh, I should tell mom. Because I was, and still am, very much like, I would rather fix a problem myself if I can, and only ask for help if I absolutely positively need it. This might be a personal problem. But, so, my sister's sitting there. I don't even know if she was crying that much, because I feel like if she was crying, our mom would have heard and would have come upstairs, but she did not. So, I'm assuming she wasn't crying too much. But, at first I was just like, oh my god. I do remember going downstairs to get a towel or a washcloth or something. I think I got a washcloth. That sounds right, because I remember, like, I believe I had the thought of, well, it should be wet, because that'll help clean up, too. So I got a washcloth and brought it back upstairs to my sister. We didn't have a working bathroom or anything on the second floor, so, had to run downstairs to get that and then run back upstairs. And then eventually, like, it's a head injury, and in hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not gonna stop bleeding really easily with just a washcloth. So, but as a kid, I didn't think about that. But, eventually I was like, okay, this is still bleeding, Chelsea's gonna die or something, I guess I should probably go tell mom. Went and told our mom. We ended up going to the hospital. My sister needed stitches. Yeah, it's a whole thing. She probably has a very, interesting take on this story. I think she would agree with how it happened. I think she has more interesting memories of, like, what happened on the way to the hospital and at the hospital and all of that. But she ended up with stitches in her forehead and all this stuff. And she still has a scar there to this day. And that is the story of Timber, and how my sister and I were, like, really crazy, reckless kids. I think a lot of kids were back then and before then, but, it's just interesting, because I can't imagine anything like that happening to a kid nowadays, because I feel like too many parents are, like, really determined to protect their children from everything, which in some ways is great, but also I feel like our childhood was a little more interesting, because even though crazy, terrible, horrible stuff like that kind of happened, that wasn't even that horrible. We survived, like, she's alive, and doesn't, to my knowledge, have frontal lobe damage or anything. Like, she's fine. So, like, it it was an injury and it was kind of traumatic, but not so traumatic that it's not a fun story to tell these days. So, yeah. Like a lot of adults, I kind of miss the days when I was a kid, and I look back on those times with nostalgia. Even the crazy stuff like that. And here we are, and this has gotten long again, and I didn't intend for this to be this long, because I don't want to edit this, but here we are. Anyway, that is the story of Timber and my sister's 3 stitches when she was 3 years old. Hooray. um, this has been my Riacom, trying to get used to the sound of my own recorded voice, and I will chat at you again tomorrow. Bye.